Breaking: everyone just quit and stabbed Trump in back while he's in Oz, but he still got last laugh. They say that all's fair in love and war. We're not sure which one is going on in Washington right now, but it definitely has some reminiscence of both. The politicians that are surrounding the president pretend to love him until he gets out of what they consider to be the line, and then they want to go to war. The problem with going to war with President Trump right now is that if you win, you defeat the nation that you're supposed to be working for. Sadly, this isn't a deterrent for many of those who are just looking to make the here and now more comfortable for themselves. Some of this controversy is sparked by a council of other businessmen that were supposed to be advising the president on certain initiatives that they found to be important. In the interest of getting projects done, and getting advice from those who've had success in their chosen fields, many powerful CEOs were assembled for something called the National Infrastructure Advisory Council. These were people that the president planned to lean on, just as several of his predecessors did. Never wanting to waste an opportunity to get the upper hand though, a large amount of these businessmen have decided that they're no longer interested in lending their support to the president in decision-making. They've made a very high-profile move and announced that they'll no longer be serving at the pleasure of the president. They'd like to publicly withdraw their support of his seeking their advice. This makes about as much sense as cutting off your own nose to spite your face, but that's what they're doing, and it is getting some attention. Via the Hill. Several members of yet another of President Trump's advisory councils have decided to quit, the White House confirmed Tuesday. A number of those sitting on the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, NIAC, who were appointed under the previous administration, submitted their resignations on Monday evening, one day before the panel was scheduled to hold its quarterly business meeting. The panel is tasked with advising the President and the Homeland Security Department on the security of critical U.S. infrastructure and information systems. The council, which was created by former President George W. Bush, can have up to 30 members, who are appointed by the President from the private sector, academia and state and local government. We can confirm that a number of members of the NIAC who had been appointed under the previous administration have submitted their resignation, a White House official said in a statement to The Hill. The NIAC met today as planned with the majority of its members, who remain committed to the important work of protecting our nation's critical infrastructure. The latest resignations come 1 week after Trump's dissolution of 2 major business councils, whose members began to resign en masse over the president's response to the deadly violence at a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. The White House also decided last week to abandon plans to form a council of outside advisors on rebuilding the country's infrastructure. The interesting part of this scenario is that they want to be politically removed from him, but they don't actually want to give up the perks of being connected to him. They'll still be bothering him with their opinions, they just needed to remove themselves from having an official connection to him. This makes it easier to publicly disagree with any policies that wouldn't be good for their reputation. Given, they're not idiotic enough to want to actually cut themselves off from having access to him, they just want to make sure they put their own interests before the interest of the country. Via the New York Times. The resignation en masse was symbolic. Importantly symbolic. But nothing more. Lest anyone believe that the business world has collectively gotten up from the table and washed its hands of Washington and the Trump administration, think again. Companies will continue to advocate their positions, forcefully, in person and through lobbying groups. The only difference is that they won't be sitting in meetings described as councils with cameras and photo opportunities. The people in Mr. Trump's inner circle have a much harder decision to make. Mr. Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, said as much to his classmates at Yale, who had written him an open letter calling for him to resign. I believe that having highly talented men and women in our country surrounding the president and his administration should be reassuring to you and all the American people, he wrote in a response posted on Twitter. That response may not satisfy everyone. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton, wrote on Twitter that he could understand that Mr. Mnuchin might make a different decision than he would in deciding to stay on in the administration. But he then took direct aim at Mr. Mnuchin, writing, At Steve Mnuchin one invests his credibility in defending at real Donald Trump. Will he have credibility when financial crisis requires it? This shouldn't come as any great surprise, considering what the media has tried to do to President Trump's reputation. They've made every move he makes sound like it's going to be the end of the world as we know it. This overt bias and manipulation of you, the American people, is something that if not overcome will only lead to greater strife and dysfunction in government. You might not agree with everything that the president does, but he gets the chance to do it for the next 3.5 years, and advising him the best way that you know how will hopefully only help the country. Perpetuating this persona of irresponsibility in the president that the media is nursing along will only hurt us. Thank you for watching this video. What do you think about this? Share this on Facebook and Twitter along with your comments.